We have time for one more question. If somebody else has a question, just jump right on in.
I'd love to hear more, Brian. I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about your experience with. We hear a lot, for good reason, about the women, Team USA, the women's national soccer team. I don't think I've ever heard too much about men's national team, or like had a chance to hear from people who went through that experience. Would love to hear just a few thoughts about that, what that experience was like. And also, I don't know, maybe you could also timestamp it a little bit so we could kind of get a sense for, a lot of us might have known what was happening in the women's game, but like, how did that sort of, match up with what was happening in the women's game at that time with the men's national team?
Oh, man. So I'll give you the very condensed version for time. But I grew up in Memphis. So those of you that follow the women's side, Cindy Parlow is still a great friend of mine. Cindy was one of, I still think, like Brandy. I mean, they were kind of figures. Brandy was at the top of her game. Cindy was with that team, a little bit younger. And we grew up, and some of us that were training. And then there were actually 3 more people out of our high school, interesting enough, that went on to play at some point on the national team or had an opportunity with the Olympic team, went on to play professionally. So we had this kind of unique little culture in Memphis. Fast forward to the first time I got invited was actually the U17 national team before the Olympic team. And I went out there and realized very quickly, that was back when Tony Miola and Lexi Lawless and Brad Friedel was out there on the older team. I'm 45, so to kind of put that in context. And I remember looking up like my heroes on there, being very intimidated, very overwhelmed, like, holy crap, what have I got myself into? And realizing the lesson in this was everybody was strong and fast and skilled. The difference truly, like in business and life, there was a mindset difference in maturity between those that I looked up to and what I had. I didn't have it at that age. So it set me on this journey of where I still to this day, learning and growing and understanding mindset and understanding psychology and visualization and all of that. That was what I was missing. And so I got cut from the U17 national team, made it back on the U23, had a chance with U20. So it's kind of a cycle. For those like myself, I never got to actually play in the Olympics. I never got to play and going to like a World Cup. I got to play in a bunch of exhibition games, all these cool training camps and all of that. But what I look back on, what I learned was you can have all the speed and natural talent and ability, but there is something different about the real champions on the field. And it's why I'll share with this group, personal to me, watching the goalkeepers. It's why I would tell you Zach Steffen wasn't picked, in my opinion, to go with the men's team this year, is when Greg Bolhalter looked at that and he saw Matt Turner and he saw Sean Johnson and their mental toughness and what they've demonstrated. You go with the person that not only has the skill and the ability, but also has the mindset to make fewer mistakes and is going to be a team player. That's my personal opinion, right? So I'm just going to kind of share that through there. Watching the U.S. women's the other night, what's interesting is you're seeing the men really start to elevate their game, and we'll see how they do in a week. But the women's game, unfortunately, has slowed down to a point that we need to reevaluate what's happening there, in my opinion, of get that back to a dominant stature. And they have done such great things for like my daughter playing that I'll be forever grateful. But I think our sport has a long way to go. MLS has come a long way. We still have further to go. And I'll be one of those kind of pushing it forward. But that's what I would share. A lot of stuff to it, but that's been the journey and what you learn along the way.